And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Thursday, April 2nd. And we're looking at snow continuing across the FM area. However, the southern edge of this is just about ready to push through the area. We should see the snow taper off here from Fargo southward as we head into the afternoon as the more moderate snow moves off to the north. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki along with our Ag Director Bridgette Readel. And Bridgette, are you ready for more snow after today's little event that we've got going through the area?
I am.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's coming.
Yeah, right.
Right? Yeah, Addison's like, bring it. Let's do this.
Right? Might as well, right? Yeah, we do have, we've picked up about 2.5 inches of snow here at the studio. And we're going to probably wind up with about 3 inches before this is said and done today. So not much additional snowfall. And as I said, this should be coming to an end here by about 2 or 3 o'clock, but continuing to snow to our north and into northwest Minnesota as well for the rest of the afternoon. Then we focus on what's to come Friday night or Friday afternoon into Saturday. Now, the National Weather Service has just issued a winter storm warning for much of the area as we're expecting 6+ inches of additional snow. So if you want to know more on that, log on to our website, WDAYradionow.com. I've got snowfall projection maps, watches and warnings where they're at. If you have any travel plans, there's going to be a window where travel will be okay. One of those windows would be later today, let's say evening hours through the overnight into tomorrow morning, where the roadways should be cleared off, just wet. So that would be a good time to travel. Starting tomorrow afternoon, we're looking at snow pulling in from the west. Now, if you have any travel plans going west, let's say towards Bismarck or Dickinson, those areas will be getting in on the heavy snow as early as tomorrow morning. So if you're going west towards the central or western part of the state, I would leave this evening. Don't wait till tomorrow because you're going to run into some tricky travel once you get out towards the Bismarck area, and it will only go downhill throughout the day tomorrow. So if you're going south towards the cities, again, tonight into tomorrow morning would be your best bet before the heavier snow moves in from the west. So I know it's a big travel weekend. And again, we are expecting more snow. So after today's snow, we'll drop off into the mid-20s to upper 20s tonight. And then as we head into your Friday, the morning starts out okay. But we'll see that winter storm warning that goes into effect as we head into the afternoon. Snow spreads in from the west. It'll become heavy by Friday evening and Friday overnight. Expect periods of heavy snow. And that snow will continue through about lunchtime on Saturday. We're expecting an additional about 6 to maybe as much as 10 inches of additional snow around the FM area. And that will extend generally along the 94 corridor through Fargo and then arcing northeastward up through Bemidji and Duluth, where I think the heavier snowfall, we're looking at 14, 15, 16 inches are possible from Bemidji over towards Duluth. Those areas are more than likely going to get hit the hardest with this. By Saturday night, storm is out of here. Doesn't look like any problems then as conditions will improve. And Sunday, for Easter Sunday, it should be quiet and might even see a little bit of sunshine on Easter Sunday. So if you're doing any Easter egg hunts, well, you're going to don't bury those Easter eggs too deep in the snow. Kids will never find them. But yeah, a late season spring snow or late winter snow, early spring snow. And this will end up being the biggest snow of the winter. So... or spring, however you want. How about winter season? This will be the biggest one so far.
Happens every year. April,
it?
she likes to say she's all spring flowers and whatnot. She's not. She's a lot more about snow. And Addison, as you were listening to that forecast, I just envisioned you ripping off your headphones and throwing them down and leaving the room because you've got to travel. And that's enough of this. Just, you're going to have to go.
Normally, everyone in my family knows this too. My normal go-to saying is "Red car, go vroom vroom," because normally that's
Hmm.
what it does. But I have a feeling that today after work, red car will go comfortably slow.
Yeah, it's not going to be vroom vroom today. Today is more of a uh, full coverage insurance day for many people who are out there. If you're a liability only, you might not want to make this your day to be on the road.
Well, I'm in luck.
Fair. Yeah, fair statement, right?
Yeah,
Maybe folks out there,
liability only, stay home today, no doubt.
yes. Maybe we've got some folks out there who are listening that are willing to give us what their snow totals look like. If you have your WDAY weather gauge, not even rain gauge, but your weather gauge out and you're collecting snow, go ahead and let us know what your snow totals might be. You can email Dean weather@flagfamily.com. You can find me ag@flagfamily.com. And we'd be happy to hear what you're seeing for totals going on right now. Then, if you would prefer to give us a call, we're okay with that. You can reach us on the JLA Insurance phone line. That number is 701 293 9000. Nate Thorsrud, he's JLA Insurance. He's also a farmer too, so he understands what's going on with the crop insurance changes. Give him a call. There's still time to have that discussion about higher premium subsidies and better coverage options, at least so you have an understanding what's coming for the next year. And Lighthouse Commodities, thank you to them for bringing us our live stream. They bring the live stream out so all of you can be watching on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Acres TV. And in fact, looking at the North Dakota Road Report, which one of these days I'll push enough buttons to be able to share what that road report looks like right here on our live stream. But I can describe it for everybody that right now you are seeing mostly all the way to Jamestown, highways look wet. As you go west, they are good to go from Bismarck going west to Dickinson, and snow covered at least from the start of going north on I-29 from Fargo to probably about Grandin, Gardner perhaps. It's not terrible, but if we see temperatures falling, be prepared for ice. A lot of slush. I had to make a grocery store run this morning, and even keep it in four-wheel drive because plows have been out, but there's still a lot of slush buildup, and you can get into some of those tracks, and they want to just take you and drag you right down into the ditch or across the center line. So just keep that in mind when you're traveling to slow down today, and watch out for what's on the highways. It won't be your first go around in doing this.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh, go ahead, Dean.
No, I was just going to say, no doubt. And those secondary roads, those are the ones that are, like you said, a lot of slush, and you can easily lose control on that. So just looking out at the interstate system right now, it's just wet, which is great news. And somebody asked me, temperatures are in the 20s right now. Why aren't we seeing more icy conditions? And it's pretty simple. When you even
stop asking for that kind of thing.
I know,
Who called
exactly.
about that?
I know. But with the April sun, even though it's cloudy, you're still getting some insulation with the sun through the cloud deck. And so that is keeping the roadways, the ground temperature is right around the freezing mark, but that is keeping the roadways, at least the main thoroughfares, which are treated, just wet, even with it snowing. So now, again, that will change when this snows at night, not tonight, but the Friday night, Saturday system. That doesn't matter. Even Saturday morning into early afternoon, it's going to be pretty nasty. So even though road conditions are okay today, don't anticipate that as we head into late tomorrow and into Saturday, the first half of the day.
And I know some of you are out there saying, "Oh, would you stop telling me to watch out for the roads because I'm old enough, I've lived here long enough, I know better." Okay, fine. I won't tell you. But I'm also not coming to pull you out when you're in the ditch. So there.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanting to share that. Okay, next week, the 2026 Land Annual Meeting is going on at Devil's Lake. You can attend on Wednesday night, April 8th. There is a social and networking that night. Then on Thursday, the meeting will start at about 10 a.m. They've got keynote speakers like Senator Kevin Kramer. You have Shannon Full from the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce. A couple of panel discussions. One of them talks about the U.S. Fish and Wildlife lawsuit updates, and then also talking about water conveyance with ditches, economic impact, etc. Especially if you want to talk about water management, this is a great conference for you. And if you have questions about how to find it, how to attend, well, go ahead and just drop me an email, ag@flagfamily.com, and I'll share the RSVP details with you as well. We are going to be joined after the livestock report from the American Egg Network we'll be joined by Aaron Lorenz and Steve Naeve. They're both with the University of Minnesota. It's not Steve, Seth. They are with agronomy, plant genetics, as well as soybean breeding. And we're going to visit about that program, what they do for the region, and some of their research is going to be coming up for 2026. We'll be back. If you were on listening to our WDAY Radio Farm Show last week, you had the opportunity to hear two of our past assistant ag directors helping us, and they did a stellar job. We work with Cass County Farm Bureau, and they help provide us with interns who are on with us each month. They interview guests, they answer questions, talk with us on air, and they just are fabulous. There hasn't been a disappointment yet. In fact, Next week, we'll have another one of our assistant ag directors joining us after she just did an agricultural tour in the European Union. And so those students continue to perform, and they live up to the pillars of Farm Bureau here in Cass County by making sure to share their agricultural education and advocate on behalf of an industry that they enjoy. Others who work in this industry and do things that they enjoy, well, those would be our guests today. We are joined by Aaron Lorenz and Seth Naeve, and they are both with the University of Minnesota. Now, if I have this correctly, Seth is in agronomy and plant genetics. Aaron does soybean breeding and genetics. Aaron, did I get those right? Oh, we've got Seth right now. Okay, so Seth, did I get all that right about agronomy and plant genetics for you? Well, he's on mute right now, so I'm going to have to get his microphone to work, and then we can hear him talk a little bit better. We'll see if Seth can do that for us, because I'm excited to hear what's going on in soybeans these days. There's always up and coming changes, and it's so important that we continue to see innovation in that crop, because as an area where we raise quite a bit of soybeans, we want to add value. We want to do different things in our industry that can help us all out and continue to show us what we can have happening in the soybean market with new products development and so much more. So, Seth, did that work for you?
I hope I'm with you. Do you have me now?
Yes, we
Okay,
do. I'm excited to have you here.
Very good.
All right.
I hit the wrong little button here on my end. Sorry, that was my fault.
No worries. Now, Seth, you are working at University of Minnesota, and I understand with agronomy and plant genetics, correct?
That's correct. Both Aaron and I are professors in the Department of Agronomy and Plant Genetics, and I'm a soybean agronomist, and he's the soybean breeder within our department.
So tell us more. When you say you're professors, you are teaching, are you doing research as well? What does your routine look like for an academic year?
Very good question. So Aaron is, we're both researchers. Aaron is, again, a soybean breeder, so he spends his most time with variety development and the genetics of soybean, educating graduate students. And I'm a soybean agronomist, so I'm out planting plots and trying to improve soybean production practices for farmers, increase yields, increase the quality of the soybeans. I'm in extension, and Aaron is a teaching faculty. So we both have teaching appointments, but mine is with adults as an extension specialist, and his is with graduate and undergraduate students.
Hey, some of us as adults, we need just as much or more teaching than the college age students do. So I don't fault you for this whatsoever.
For sure. I get every day. We have to learn every day, right?
How many years have you been working in this position with University of Minnesota?
More than 25 years, actually. So I'm getting pretty long in the tooth around here. So I have a pretty good feel for what's happening on the ground for Minnesota production.
So this is pretty loaded. But if you think back over those 25 years, and I've got a history in agronomy too, but particularly for soybeans, what have you watched change in those 25 years for Minnesota's soybean production?
It's just, I think most recently, I think we're all acutely aware of how off-farm economics, the world, the macroeconomics of the world is really driving profitability and how we produce our crop. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that farmers really have to evolve over time. We've had years with $14 soybeans, and the farmers can basically produce a good yield and have good profit just by throwing the beans on the ground or adding as many inputs and things that they want. But now we're in a situation where we're kind of back to basics, and we really have to be lean and mean and understand how to produce a bushel of soybeans with the greatest ROI. So it's a different world, but that's not based on really what's happening on farm. The other side, I guess, if you want to get the whole picture of this, farm demographics and just generational shifts in wealth and how production is happening on the farm has been a big change for me in 25 years. It's much more of a business practice than it was in the old days, and so farmers really have to be businessmen first, and I think agronomists probably second.
Oh, I think businessmen needs to come first and foremost in anything that we do. You're right. The agronomy things, a lot of them are going to depend on what we're doing when it comes to our business end. So, if we think through what you're doing academically, I read a little bit about the University of Minnesota Soybean Research Center. And Seth, it looks to me like you're fairly involved in that as well.
Yeah, so Aaron and I are both co-directors of the University of Minnesota Soybean Research Center. We started this 3 or 4 years ago. This is really to highlight the depth and breadth of the soybean research that we've got occurring at the University of Minnesota. We have a really, really deep bench, all the way from highly applied people like me out planting soybean plots with fungicides and insecticides evaluations, all the way through breeding, genomics and genetics, all the way through new uses, and also uses for food use, as well as the animal scientists and nutritionists. So we've got everybody all through the value chain working at the University of Minnesota. We probably have the deepest bench and the most collaborative group of researchers working on soybeans at any university in the US. And so we really wanted to highlight that. So we built a soybean research center to really focus on promoting what we do for the soybean growers of Minnesota and beyond. It's been a really useful exercise for us.
As we think back over the last years, I watched the introduction of round ready soybeans in the late 90s, and all of us are familiar with what things we have seen change in the industry over the last 25, 30 years. Soybean cyst nematode, that's one of those nemesis that are out there. And I know I'm going to have a bunch of questions about that, but also, Seth, and this might be a question for Aaron when he joins us, so you have to tell me who gets this one. Do we think that we have watched soybean yields increase quite a lot in the last 25 years, or do we feel like we've sort of plateaued and there's some other things we have to work around until we can find the next way to increase our yield? Any thoughts to that?
Yeah, and I would let Aaron hit on that. He's the breeder, and so he's been responsible for a big portion of that yield increase. Management is the other piece, and then as scientists, we have to add the environment lastly. So we've definitely had a change in the environment that's allowed us to grow our crops a little bit differently. But management has increased over time. I think producing greater corn and cereal crop yields has helped us to support a soybean crop. But the breeders are really primarily responsible for this. I think there's two more to answer your question directly. We have been increasing yields at about the same percentage rate. It's just partially due to the fact that soybeans have a lower base yield, and so as we increase yields, we just don't see it as greatly as we do with corn and other crops. The other side of it, I think, is just a psychological one, in that corn yields have really increased at a huge rate. We've got an opportunity to exploit corn genetics to a greater extent, perhaps, than soybean because of the hybrid nature of corn and the genetic diversity. And so I think it's limited us a little bit on the soybean side, but I think we're also in Minnesota, Red River Valley, North Dakota, South Dakota, we're really in an environment that really produces good corn. And so if you think about iron deficiency chlorosis and these high pH areas, we can produce 250 bushel yield corn, but we're always going to struggle to get 60, 70 bushel soybeans. So I think there's a whole bunch in that question, and I think SCN is a portion of that, but it's only one piece of that whole pie.
Oh, there's so many more pieces of that pie to discuss, and we will do that now that Aaron has been able to join us. But first, we have our bottom of the hour news. So when we return, we're going to bring Aaron into the conversation, introduce who he is, and then we'll continue asking questions about soybean cyst nematode, but also mapping of soybean genes and the implications that has for growers in the region. Stay tuned. Thank you to Seth, Naeve, and Aaron Lorenz of the University of Minnesota. They're with our soybean research over there. In fact, Seth is in a soybean extension. Aaron is a soybean breeder, and we've been peppering them with questions all about what's happening for production and improvements in soybeans through the state of Minnesota. Aaron, a couple questions for you. One of them would have to be, when it comes to looking at soybean cyst nematode, are we making some headway, or what needs to happen for us as far as getting a handle on cyst nematode and how we can do better in managing it?
Well, that's a good question. I think, first of all, yes, I think we're making some headway. I think the major issue for, you still there?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, the screen switched on me here. So I think that the major accomplishments in the last 10 years or so has been the introduction of more Peking type varieties into the commercial marketplace. For a long, long time, the market was pretty much saturated by a certain type of resistance known as the PI88788 type of resistance, and it's pretty much the only one available out there. And nicely, in the last 10 years or so, I think the number of Peking varieties available commercially has really gone up quite a lot. And there are some really nice high-yielding Peking varieties out there. So farmers can use those in rotation in their field with their 88788 types to stave off what we call the breakdown of resistance in the field. That is when the field populations of SCN start to overcome the resistance of the soybean variety and evolve over time. So, and then on top of that, researchers both in the public and the private sector are developing lots of new types of resistance from different genetic sources out there in the soybean world. So those are still under development, but I'm confident that in the next decade or so, we'll have some nice things available for growers to plant in the fields.
Are there other areas of the U.S. that fight soybean cyst nematode in the same respect that we do up here?
Oh yeah, for sure. Soybean cyst nematode has actually been a bigger problem down south longer than it's been a problem up here in the north. And it's, with respect to the history of soybean production in this country, it's been a pretty recent problem actually in northern Minnesota and North Dakota, to the extent that we're getting lots of fields out there that are having these huge outbreaks of nematodes in the field in the order of thousands or maybe even close to 10,000 eggs per acre.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the levels have leveled off in southern Minnesota and further south, and even places like Missouri. They even have nastier types of SCN populations down there than we have up here. So they rely on even different sources of resistance than we have here.
Okay, I had a couple of questions actually, but I certainly want to ask these because as a soybean breeder, Aaron, I think you probably have the fix to these questions or the answer to these questions, and that is, if places like Missouri, et cetera, if they have even worse strains of soybean cyst nematode, how do they get here? Because that's probably a question that people wonder. Are they just naturally exist in our soil? Do they move with equipment? How do we prevent that movement?
Yeah, they move the soil. So they move with the soil. They move with the soil erosion. They move on equipment. They move on probably semi-trucks that are entering and exiting fields and driving up the highway. So they're going to move with the soil. So anywhere that soil moves through equipment, water, wind, they're going to go along with it. So it's really good practice to make sure you clean your machinery if you're moving between fields that are infected, and those fields that are not infected, you should really clean off your machinery as well as you can, so you don't inadvertently transport nematodes across fields.
I think most farmers are aware of that, but frankly, not everybody realizes they're kind of like the zebra mussels of the agricultural world, is that you can move those little soybean cyst nematodes with equipment the same way you can a zebra mussel in a boat.
Right, exactly.
And additionally, before I go to some questions for both you and Seth, I've got one more for Aaron, and that is mapping soybean genes. I've heard this discussion multiple times. I'm not a breeder. I have a background in agronomy, but my question is, what are you finding, and what's your ultimate goal when soybean breeders look at mapping the soybean gene? What information are you going to be able to pull from that that's useful in today's production?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, just going back to the soybean cyst nematode example. So a main reason we want to map genes that give resistance to soybean cyst nematode is it allows breeders to more easily select for that resistance. So a big challenge with with measuring resistance to soybean cyst nematode in soybean varieties is that the process of actually measuring that resistance using plants and using nematodes is really difficult and very expensive. You have to grow the plants in a greenhouse. You have to maintain these colonies of nematodes, and you have to affect the plants, and you have to do that in a really highly replicated environment. So, and then you have to count the cysts that develop on the roots. So it's very laborious and very expensive. And so what researchers try to do is they try to identify, through a process of genetic mapping, identify where the gene that gives resistance exists on a chromosome. And then they can basically use what are called molecular markers, basically chemical assays that determine whether a certain variety has the gene or doesn't have the gene. In a laboratory type of setting that is much quicker, much cheaper to do. So I can get those results from the laboratory on the molecular marker to tell me which varieties have a resistance gene and which ones don't. And that allows me to make good selections on the basis of that very cheap, effective, and a high throughput and easy to get result, as opposed to actually growing the plants. That's the main reason why breeders to map genes. And then also, if you map genes, you can understand the gene and then maybe use your understanding of how that gene works in the plant to engineer future types of resistance using genetic engineering, genome editing, things like that.
Oh, I can't wait to see more types of things that happen with the genome editing, et cetera, because those have been some pretty great breakthroughs so far in a number of arenas. Both of you have a hand in the University of Minnesota Soybean Research Center, as we visited with Seth about that. Seth, I see on their discussion about soybeans and biofuels, but I know you've also had a hand in some other product development. What's the next big thing, you might say, that y'all are working on to look to extend soybeans and how where we use them for a variety of industry?
Yeah, there's a lot of examples. I think having this food and fuel channels for our soybeans is really important. So I think the biofuels and a lot of this is related to government mandates and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities for big volumes to get swallowed up with renewable diesels and things like that. On the food side, I give you one example that's very close to myself, is that we're very interested in improving the quality of the protein for animals, so that soybean meal has a higher value to those end users. I think we're beyond those days where farmers can grow whatever they want to grow and sell them at the elevator, and then they go off and they're feeding the world with their products. Now we really have to be competitive. We have to produce a product that some end user wants to use. So having a better amino acid balance, having more energy in the soybean meal, having lower anti-nutritionals, trypsin inhibitors, and things like that some of our group are working on. So folks like Bob Stupar at the Soybean Research Center is working on some of those things along with Aaron. And then we also have animal nutritionists that are evaluating those types of soybeans and soybean meals to better place those in the market or help give us some information on the value proposition for those newer, better kinds of soybeans and soybean products.
You've prompted me as a reminder. I need to finish reading an article I started about roasted soybeans being used in a finishing diet for beef animals, because that really would tie into this conversation.
And that's a huge new area for us in this high oleic soybeans and the dairy, and this area is a big push right now, and just in the last year or so. So very exciting.
Gentlemen, I know that research, especially for Aaron as a breeder, has a number of facets for the upcoming year. Is there a highlight of something that you're going to be working on in your research that you're willing to share with folks today?
For myself, that's a hard question to answer. A lot of things that I don't have time to talk to, I suppose. I guess the first one that comes to mind is we're initiating lots of studies on what we call variety by cropping systems interactions. So there's an increased interest in using cover crops, winter annuals, to grow along with soybeans, because soybeans are actually very amenable to growing with these crops as a partner crop with either a winter annual type crop like winter camelina or a cover crop like winter annual rye. So the big question is, does your choice of soybean variety impact your yield when planting into that system versus more of a conventional system without a cover crop? So that's something that we're initiating some field trials to look at that. To what extent are there interactions between those varieties and which cropping system they're planted into?
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing what that should lead to. And so, also to Seth, if folks are interested in learning more about the University of Minnesota Soybean Research Center, how can they find that? What are the recommended methods?
Yeah, I think Google University of Minnesota Soybean Research Center. We've got a nice website that will lead them to some of the contacts we have, and some give us a little bit of a description of each of the faculty working in the area. So I think that would be that's probably the best place to start with, is just a simple Google search. And maybe Aaron has the URL at the tip of his fingers.
I actually just Googled it. And it comes with it's the first result. It's the first result. So
sometimes it's better just to give people the keywords than the actual letters. It works better with my mind anyway.
I understand entirely. Gentlemen, thank you so kindly for joining us today. Great information. Appreciate the chance to learn about what you're doing for soybeans in the state of Minnesota. When we return, we have to finish up with Wednesday weather trivia because we missed it yesterday. Oh, and there's snow, winter storm watches, and weather warnings, and more.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. 1:53 in the afternoon, and the light snow across the FM area and pointing southward is starting to wind down. That is pushing northward, but areas up around the Grand Forks over through Bemidji, you'll see snow through the evening hours before that tapers off. But here in the FM area, we're done right now with the accumulating snow. We picked up about 2.5 to 3 inches across the FM area, so not a lot, and we'll probably see an inch of this compact or kind of settle down. Roadways are okay. They're just wet. That's good news. But as we said, National Weather Service has just upgraded our area to a winter storm warning for much of the area. That starts tomorrow afternoon and goes through Saturday afternoon as heavy snow is expected to come back in with the second storm system. And again, if you want to know more on snowfall totals, what I'm expecting around the area, log on to our website at WDAYradionow.com and also on our social media pages. So we didn't get to weather trivia yesterday, so we're going to hit it today for your chance to win one of our Darter Plastic Bait-Up Cups, and just in time for fishing season, which it doesn't look like it now, but it's right around the corner. And today's trivia question: we haven't had much snow yet this season. What is our biggest snow total in terms of snow event this season? I'll give you a hint. It was a 3-day storm. What is our biggest snow event that we've had so far this season? All right, we already got a caller on line one. Caller, what's your name? What's your guess? Hello, caller. What's your name? 3-2 and goodbye. They missed out. All right, caller, what's your name and what's your guess?
It's Terry and 5.5.
Terry, you know what? You're close. We'll give it to you. It was 5.4. Do you know when it was, Terry?
Let me think. December.
It was actually in February. It was a 3-day storm in February. We received a little over 4 inches, then 0.8, and then 0.2. So congrats, Terry. Congrats.
Thank you.
We're going to put you on hold, and our wonderful, talented Director Addison, he'll get your information and how you can pick up your Darter Plastic Bait-Up Cup.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Have a great holiday weekend. All right. So, 5.4 inches. That was the biggest snow we've had so far this season, and we are going to obviously eclipse that. Not this round, but that next round coming in on Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon. It does look like that is going to be about an additional 6 to 9 inches, and that goes from Dickinson, generally along that 94 corridor, Dickinson through Bismarck, Jamestown, Fargo, and then curving up northeastward into northern Lakes Country up towards Bemidji and then over towards Duluth, where there's going to be some areas in northern Minnesota before all is said and done are going to have an additional 17 inches of snow. So this is going to be, and it's a heavy wet snow. It's going to be very difficult, that heart attack snow, difficult to drive in, like you said earlier, Bridgette, with all that slush, and it's going to be a mess Friday night into early Saturday. Now, the good news out of this is by Easter Sunday, actually by Saturday night, this storm is out of here. That'll give the road crews a really decent chance to clean up the roadways. And by Easter Sunday, we'll probably see even a little bit of sunshine, and it'll be quiet for Easter Sunday. So if you're traveling Easter Sunday, we're good to go. It's prior to that. For Friday into Saturday, that is going to be the problem period as that second stronger storm system pulls out of the Rockies. So, I'd like to say this is going to be it in terms of snowfall, but it looks like we might have one more, a weaker one, coming around the 9th through the 11th of this month. And then we're getting some pretty strong signals that after the 15th, we'll start to see more consistent warmer weather finally push into the area. So this snow won't last too long. We'll start melting this already next week as we bump things up into the 40s. So again, that's the good news about these spring storms. They can be big and they can be bothersome, but they don't last long. Give it a week and a lot of this stuff will be melted away.
And that usually happens here in the month of April, which if you look at what's our largest single-day snowfall totals, a lot of them happen in April and also late March. So this is not really a surprise to anyone.
Right. And how about
Also,
that one at the end of April 27th, the one you sent me, 27 inches up around mine. How would you like that? We're knocking on the door of May and we get over 2 feet of snow. That would not be fun.
Oh, it's not a surprise. That happened in 1984. That was 27 inches in Ward County.
Yeah.
Just that's not a surprise.
Oof.
At the end of April. Absolutely happens more often than not.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, that'll do it for us for Weather and Ag in Focus. We have the day off on Thursday, or today is Thursday, for Friday, for Good Friday. So we'll see you all on Monday, but don't go anywhere. The Jay Thomas Show, it's coming up next.